I've longed for children, but you're the reason we couldn't have them." My husband spat out, hurling those hurtful words at me after 20 years of marriage. In that moment, I realized I couldn't continue with him. His callousness cut deep and his mind was elsewhere, dreaming of a new life without me. It felt as if some divine eye had witnessed his cruelty. My name is Lisa, 45 years old, a secretary at a law firm. Our marriage, nearing 2 decades, had been modest and childless. Despite our shared desire for children, infertility plagued us, primarily my own struggles. I underwent treatments, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, only to face disappointment. When I turned 40, we conceded defeat. My husband's desire for children persisted, but I couldn't endure the pain and financial strain any longer. We decided to halt treatments and embrace a childless life, opting for luxury trips instead. Yet the pang of regret lingered, especially when confronted with images of children on TV or greeting cards. Even 5 years post-treatments, guilt and remorse gnawed at me. Then, a school reunion beckoned after a decade. My husband encouraged me to take a break, sensing it as a mini vacation. It felt like a temporary escape from the weight of our childless existence. I realized I had scarcely been out alone since our wedding day, my life consumed by infertility treatments. But a little indulgence now and then couldn't hurt, right? At the venue, catching up with old friends felt refreshing. "Lisa, long time no see. You look great, slimmer than before," one friend remarked. Indeed, I had shed about 22 pounds over the past decade. "Thanks," I replied with a smile. "I envy you. Since marriage and kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds, she lamented. Her words, though innocent, stung a bit. "Any kids for you?" another friend asked. "No, we couldn't," I replied, feeling the weight of the question. "Just the 2 of us." "Oh, sorry for asking such an awkward question," she apologized. "No worries. Let's just enjoy ourselves," I reassured, trying to maintain a lively atmosphere. As conversation flowed, a startling revelation emerged. My son was nearly caught in a marriage scam recently, one classmate shared. I was taken aback. A scam? Yes, they asked him for $20,000 for their wedding, but it fell through, she explained. "What happened next?" I inquired, intrigued. "He couldn't afford it, so he came to us for advice. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman vanished," she recounted. "It's terrifying," I murmured, shaken by the story. "There are some awful people out there," another friend chimed in. "Really scary." "A marriage scam," I mused, shocked that such deceit could occur so close to home. Thankfully, her son had moved on with a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion continued smoothly, eventually winding down. Instead of heading to the after-party, I decided to head home, reflecting on the evening's unexpected revelations. I returned to my hotel, savoring a nightcap alone. It struck me I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. He should still be awake. Despite repeated calls, he didn't answer. Perhaps he already turned in. Well, I'd be back tomorrow, so it wasn't a pressing concern. Yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Was it women's intuition? Something felt off. From then on, my husband started arriving home unusually late on weekdays, often inebriated. "Hey, I'm home," he slurred one night, collapsing onto the living room floor. "Are you okay?" I asked, concern creeping into my voice. "Shut up. I'm home. Show some respect," he retorted, his words clouded by alcohol. As I tidied up his discarded clothes, he muttered something about Alyssa. You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. Confusion gripped me. Who was Alyssa? What did he mean by his words? Before I could inquire further, he was already asleep. Could he be cheating on me? The unease I felt that day morphed into a creeping certainty. But no, my husband was a good man. It must be drunken nonsense. Yet doubts lingered, unsettling my thoughts. I tried to reassure myself, but my husband's erratic behavior gnawed at me. Weekends meant early departures and late returns, often accompanied by the stench of alcohol. It had become a pattern I could no longer ignore. "You're going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay?" I ventured one evening. "Mind your own business. It's my money," he snapped back, dismissive of my concern. "But we need to save for our future," I insisted. His response cut deep. "Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments." "That's because you're defective." Even in his inebriated state, his words stung. I could have fathomed he'd speak to me that way. As time passed, his disparaging remarks grew more frequent. "Since you can't have kids, you should focus on showing affection to me," he'd say. With each selfish act, my love for him waned. Gone was the caring husband who once supported me through treatments. Would he ever return? After 20 years, I began questioning the essence of our marriage. But before I could confront him about it, he dropped a bombshell. "We need to talk," he said, his demeanor serious. I returned from work to find him on the sofa, his expression grave. "What's wrong? Why are you being so formal?" I asked, sensing something was amiss. "I want a divorce," he declared bluntly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. "You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden?" I pleaded, hoping for reassurance. But the idea of divorce had never crossed his mind before. "Yes," he confirmed, leaving me stunned and bewildered. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Divorce? Had my husband been considering it all along? I confronted him, desperate for clarity. "Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on?" I demanded, my emotions raw. "We've been together for 20 years, haven't we? Let's talk this through," I urged, hoping for understanding. But he met my plea with contempt. "You're clueless, aren't you?" he scoffed, his tone laced with bitterness. Confusion clouded my mind. "What do you mean? For 20 years I've wanted children, but because of you I've been denied that chance," he accused, his words cutting deep. His revelation blindsided me. "That's not fair. We decided together to stop treatments," I countered, feeling the weight of sadness and frustration. "I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child," he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tears threatened to spill as the reality sank in. "Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say," he declared proudly, pushing the papers toward me. But his next words struck like lightning. "I've already decided to remarry." "Remarry? With a 20-year-old? I gasped, disbelief coursing through me. "That's right. Alyssa," he confirmed, a smug satisfaction in his tone. Alyssa, the name echoed in my mind, the same name he had mentioned before. Woman's intuition, it seemed, was not to be underestimated. I felt a flicker of self-satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't the time for indulgence. Then my husband showed me a picture of his so-called adorable Alyssa. As I examined it closely, I struggled to contain my laughter. Surely, this had to be a joke. How could something like this be real? I prayed he didn't notice my odd reaction and swiftly composed myself. "So, you really want a child that badly?" I questioned, masking my incredulity. "Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you?" he pressed, oblivious to my internal turmoil. "I suppose there's no choice," I replied, feigning distress, though secretly his sheer idiocy made the decision easier. With each passing moment, the thought of divorcing him grew more appealing. It felt like divine intervention guiding me toward the right path. With a heavy heart, or so I pretended, I signed the divorce papers and left him behind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Surely, he would regret his actions soon enough. Time would tell. Fast forward a year after the divorce, and I encountered him on my way home from work. His appearance shocked me. "Lisa, please help me," he pleaded, his shabby appearance a stark contrast to the man I once knew. "Excuse me, who are you?" I asked, genuinely not recognizing him. "It's me, Lisa. I need your help," he insisted, desperation evident in his voice. I hesitated, taken aback by his transformation. "Long time no see," I finally managed, unsure of how to react. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned. It was now his turn to seek assistance, and I held all the cards. "Please introduce me to your company's lawyer," he implored, his request a humbling reminder of his downfall. I couldn't just agree to help out of the blue. It seemed my ex-husband was facing financial troubles. I had sensed it from his appearance, but I never imagined he would change so drastically within a year. "If it's your first consultation, it's free, but to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee," I explained, trying to navigate the situation. "I don't have that kind of money. Please help me," he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. Perplexed by his sudden predicament, I decided to hear him out. We found ourselves in a nearby cafe where he began to share his story. "Well, actually," he started, but before he could finish, I interjected. "Did that girl Alyssa run off?" I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. "How did you know?" he responded, surprise evident in his voice. Just as I suspected. When you showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. She looked exactly like the one who killed a classmate's son at a reunion, I explained, recalling the warning given by the classmate about a woman named Sally, approximately 22 years old. Her age and name are probably fake, of course. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, I added, connecting the dots. Of course you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? He questioned, realization settling in. Well, I guess you could say I knew. But what happened? I inquired, eager to unravel the full story. When I pressed my husband for an explanation, this was the story he offered. About a year ago, he met a woman named Alyssa at a nightclub. My husband, who had always harbored a desire for children, seemed to have shared his thoughts with her. It was during one of these conversations that Alyssa made an astonishing offer. She could bear a child for him. Their relationship blossomed from there. He started frequenting the club almost every weekday and spent weekends with Alyssa outside its confines. In the process, he depleted $10,000 from his savings, accumulated during his single days. Despite this, Alyssa never demanded lavish gifts or expensive outings. She was content just to share a drink with him at the club. She was different, he insisted. Not like the stereotypical club girls you often hear about. She didn't care about designer goods or jewelry. She was happy as long as I was there with her. He painted Alyssa as hardworking and sincere, emphasizing their agreement not to touch each other's savings from their single days. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased, I admitted, unaware of his extravagant spending. Then my husband revealed the twist in the tale. Alyssa's true colors had emerged. I want to get married, but I had debts totaling about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her, I recounted, my voice heavy with regret. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her nighttime work and rarely came home. Eventually, she quit her job at the club and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so foolish? I lamented, feeling a sense of despair at having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of responsibility. A what? My husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing, he admitted. So, you basically gave her the money, is that it? I asked incredulously. In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill, I concluded, my disappointment palpable. This woman must be a pro, I mused, realizing the extent of her deception. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed. So, Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished, splitting the money into two parts across 2 different years to avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So, what should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe consult a lawyer. It'll cost you, though, he replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All my savings from my single days are gone, and the woman I loved ran away from me. I can't go back on my word to the company about remarrying after boasting about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? I thought, feeling the weight of my husband's pitiful situation. Lisa, it's my fault. Please come back to me, he pleaded. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? But his misunderstanding persisted. That matter had ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? I reminded him. You're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted, and I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Johnson, the lawyer from my company, arrived at the coffee shop. John, over here, I called out, and my ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months now, I explained. What was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today, he muttered. suddenly snapping back to reality and hurriedly leaving the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor had it that his company was abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. As Mr. Johnson and I spoke later, I confessed the truth about the charade. "I'm sorry for involving you in all this, I apologize." "No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help," he reassured me. "By the way, do you have any plans after this?" Caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered, but a fresh start in my mid-40s didn't seem like such a bad beginning. "Yes, I'd love to," I agreed, certain that a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling of excitement.
On the day my mom passed away, my sister-in-law made a hurtful joke, saying I slept in and missed the funeral. She then mentioned she wouldn't be attending. It made me angry because she had convinced my sick mom to spend a lot of money on a new house, and now she was acting this way. Trying to keep calm, I warned her she'd regret it, but she just hung up. Later, at the funeral, even my usually gentle brother was furious with her. "My name's Lisa. I'm 28, single, and have a good job that keeps me busy. Despite everything, I'm doing okay. Today is a day off from work, so I went back to my mom's place after a long time." I greeted her, and we had a nice chat over tea. My mom is a kind and elegant person, but she's been living alone since my dad passed away a few years ago. Both Dad and I always worried about her health because she's not very strong. Whenever I have time off, I make sure to visit Mom and spend time with her. During our chat, I asked if anything troublesome had happened lately. Just as she was about to tell me, the doorbell rang. Mom said it might be Stephanie. Stephanie is my brother's wife. They recently got married, and she's my sister-in-law. I often wonder how my quiet brother ended up with someone as talkative and pretty as her. Although I sometimes find her unexpected visits a bit annoying, I appreciate her caring about our mom. When Stephanie came in, she greeted us cheerfully. She mentioned how long it had been since we last met, and then started talking about my job in accounting. She said she's too busy with housework and hinted that it would be nice if I got married soon too. Yeah, maybe my sister-in-law acts timid around my mom, but sometimes she makes these sneaky comments to me. I'm not sure if she's trying to be mean, but it definitely makes me feel uneasy. Looks like my sister-in-law's here too, so I'll head out, I told Mom when I said goodbye. She agreed and said we should catch up more next time before seeing me off. As I left, I couldn't help but wonder if Mom was really okay with my sister-in-law. She's not one to gossip or complain, so I worry she might be keeping her feelings inside. A few months later, Mom told me that my brother was building a fancy new house. My brother makes a good living, but he's not super rich, right? And my sister-in-law doesn't work, so how are they affording such a big house? I wondered aloud. Well, I actually helped him out with some money from your father's inheritance. Mom confessed. How much? I asked. Around $20,000, Mom replied. $20K? Mom, are you serious? I exclaimed in shock. My dad always taught my brother and me to be self-sufficient once we grew up, so I couldn't understand why Mom would give away such a large amount of money. Stephanie, your sister-in-law, kept coming over almost every week asking for help. I just couldn't say no, especially since Andrew and Stephanie promised to take care of me when we all lived together. I felt like I had to help, Mom explained. Well, if you're sure about it, Mom, but aren't you worried you're giving too much? I asked. No, not at all. This will make things easier for you, Lisa. I'm actually excited about our new life together, Mom replied with a smile. They went ahead and built their house, and my brother, his wife, and Mom moved in together. When I visited to give them a housewarming gift, I was amazed by their luxurious house. It had a modern kitchen and bathroom, fancy interior with real wood, and a big backyard. There was no way my brother could afford all of this on his own. My sister-in-law proudly gave me a tour of the house, and when it was over, I pulled my brother aside quietly. Congratulations on the new house, Andrew. Please make sure to take good care of Mom. Thank you, Lisa. "Don't worry, Stephanie will take care of Mom while I'm at work," he assured me. I felt guilty about Mom contributing money, but we're determined to ensure she's even happier from now on. It seems my brother wasn't aware that his wife had been asking Mom for money for the new house. He's a good and kind person, but sometimes he can be a bit clueless. "Okay, just make sure you both take care of Mom. And you, focus on your job," I advised. "Let's not talk about work." "Oh, sorry, my bad," he replied. After our conversation, I gave my brother an envelope with some cash and a standing clock. "This clock can help monitor health, so please put it somewhere in the living room where Mom can see it easily." "Wow, this clock is really advanced, huh? But it could be helpful for Mom. And it looks stylish too. Let's place it here," my brother said, setting the clock on a shelf in the living room. "I should head home now." "Take care," I said. My sister-in-law was busy on the phone in another room, so I left the impressive house with my mom and brother seeing me off. 6 months had passed, and it seemed like my mom, who had been a worry, was doing well with my brother and his wife. I was able to focus on my work, thinking that these peaceful days would continue until I received the heartbreaking news of my mom's passing. When my brother came back from work, he found our mother had stopped breathing. It appeared she had passed away alone in her room. The doctors at the hospital said her existing heart condition, worsened by stress, was likely the cause of death. "Mom, why now? I wish I had come home sooner. I'm so sorry." My brother and I held onto our now lifeless mother, tears streaming down our faces. My sister-in-law, Stephanie, was not there at the time. "Brother, wasn't Stephanie supposed to be home? And what do they mean by overwork?" I asked, feeling puzzled. "No, she wasn't home. And about the overwork, I'm not sure. Stephanie took care of all the household chores, so it doesn't make sense," my brother replied, sounding confused. Feeling uneasy, I said, "Well, first things first, we need to arrange Mom's wake and funeral. You'll probably need to take the lead as the chief mourner, Andrew." "You're right, Lisa. Can you help me?" my brother asked. So my brother and I started working hard to prepare for the memorial service. It was chaotic, trying to organize everything for my mother's funeral, finding a place, making plans, reaching out to people, and more. Somehow, we managed to get through the wake, and the next day was the funeral. While my brother and I were busy with visitors, my sister-in-law just sat around doing nothing. Stephanie didn't lend a hand or show any emotion. Despite feeling increasingly frustrated with her, the hustle and bustle of the moment kept me from confronting her. "Andrew, tomorrow's the funeral, and you'll be quite occupied as the chief mourner. Why don't you and Stephanie go home for a bit? I'll stay here," I suggested. "Yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa. Thank you," my brother replied. After they left, I got my work laptop out in the now empty room and started working. I barely slept throughout the night. The next morning on the day of the funeral, even though it was scheduled to start at 10 a.m., I met up with my brother at 6 a.m. to get ready. We were swamped with preparations, going over the eulogy my brother had written as the chief mourner, meeting with the funeral director, and more. My brother mentioned that Stephanie would join us later for the actual funeral. And then, around 9:30 a.m., I got a call from Stephanie. "Hello, Lisa. I'm calling because Andrew isn't answering his phone." "Okay, and, I just woke up, overslept. I won't be able to make it to the funeral." Struggling to keep my voice steady and not let my anger show, I replied, "Okay, but you might regret missing it, you know." "Stephanie, I don't think that's a good decision. Anyway, I understand you're busy, but try to hang in there," I said before Stephanie hung up. "Hey, was that Stephanie just now?" my brother approached and asked. "Yeah, she overslept and said she's not coming today," I replied. "What? That's unbelievable." "It's our mother's funeral," my brother exclaimed. "Let's just focus on the funeral, Andrew. I'll talk to you about something afterward," I said, trying to keep things calm. Somehow, we made it through the funeral together. My brother and I paid our respects to our mother's remains, but Stephanie was still nowhere to be found. What was she thinking, not showing up for her own mother-in-law's funeral? By the way, Lisa, what did you want to show me? My brother asked, trying to shift focus. Sure, Andrew. Take a look at this, I said, pulling out my laptop. What is Displayed on the screen was the living room of my brother's house. It dawned on my brother that the clock I had given him as a gift had a hidden camera installed, meant for keeping an eye on elderly folks or pets. I had given it out of concern for Mom, but since she seemed fine, I didn't want to invade anyone's privacy, so I hadn't looked at it until now. However, yesterday, I decided to check the footage from the past week. Here it is, I said, opening a few videos. My brother watched them closely, holding his breath. What the footage showed was heartbreaking. My sister-in-law was exploiting our mother, harshly assigning all the household chores and tasks to her, from cooking to laundry to cleaning. My frail mother was being forced to work to exhaustion. While Mom was busy with the housework, Stephanie would slack off and go out. In the footage, you could occasionally see Mom clutching her chest in discomfort and hesitating to call someone on her phone, only to decide against it. Mom couldn't tell us about the mistreatment she was enduring from Stephanie. She always wanted our happiness, you know, Mom. I had no idea. Please forgive me. Both my brother and I sobbed. The pain of seeing our mother in such a situation was almost unbearable. Lisa, can we see the footage from the day Mom passed away? My brother asked me. I haven't checked it, but Mom passed away in her own room, so I don't think we have any recording of her, I replied, setting the recorded footage to the date our mother passed away. After finishing her morning chores, my mother was seen clutching her chest as she headed towards her room. They said she passed away around 2 p.m. The living room was empty for a while, but as we fast-forwarded the recording, Andrew spoke up. Hey here, stop it and turn up the volume. Around noon, my sister-in-law appeared on the camera. When we turned up the volume, we could hear her voice. Hey, mother-in-law, mother-in-law. My sister-in-law called out towards my mother's room. But when there was no response, she seemed to assume my mother wasn't there. She then sat down on the sofa and made a phone call. Hello, thanks for being with me just now. It seems like the old lady is out and about, leaving the house chores half done. Wonder what she's up to. It sounded like she was talking to someone she had been with since morning. Hearing the harsh conversation, I couldn't help but grimace. My sister-in-law continued. What, she's dead? That would be something. But then again, I could skip the funeral and maybe go on a trip with Daniel. I mean, opportunities like these don't come around very often. My brother and I stared in disbelief. The person on the other end of the line was my sister-in-law's lover. Wouldn't it be nice if that really happened? Then I could make up some story about domestic abuse for my husband, get a big divorce settlement, and buy this house. Then Daniel and I can live here together. My sister-in-law continued her conversation. So, where do you want to go if we take that trip? I'm thinking. My brother abruptly interrupted. He stopped the video, his expression changing from his usual kind and gentle demeanor to one filled with anger. Lisa, I need your help. We're going to confront her. I nodded in agreement with my brother's words and immediately made a phone call. The next day, my brother called while I was at home. Lisa, she's back. Can you come over? He asked urgently. Of course, I'm on my way, I replied, rushing over to my brother's house. As I arrived, my sister-in-law came out to greet me with a forced smile. Well, hello there, Lisa. What brings you here on such short notice? You really should have let me know you were coming, she said, looking slightly annoyed. Andrew called me here. Please come this way, my brother interjected, leading us inside the house filled with the scent of incense. We all sat down at the dining table. What's going on, you two? It sounds serious, I said. I do feel bad about missing the funeral. I addressed my sister-in-law, Stephanie, in my usual tone. But ever since you moved in, you've been treating our mother like a servant, haven't you? And even though she was sick, you made her pay $20,000 for the new house. Huh. What are you talking about? I did all the housework. Are you trying to start a fight? Stephanie retorted defensively. Actually, everything has been recorded. I'm not actually an accountant. I'm a private investigator, I revealed. My brother was the only one who knew. I pointed to the surveillance camera embedded in the living room clock and showed her my phone. The video of my mother doing housework under my sister-in-law's command was on the screen. What? This is a violation of my privacy. What were you thinking? Delete it now. Stephanie raised her voice, clearly alarmed. I installed it. As the owner of this house, I have the right to do so. It's not a violation of privacy, my brother calmly responded. What's going on with you two? And what do you mean by private investigator? Stephanie froze, realizing something was amiss. My brother silently got on his phone, and the audio of Stephanie's phone call began to play. I might just skip the funeral and go on a trip with Daniel, and maybe make up a story about domestic abuse from my husband for a big divorce settlement. As the recording played, Stephanie's face went pale. Now this isn't what it seems. Please, hear me out, she pleaded. What's the difference? Tell me, my brother demanded. Caught off guard, Stephanie began to make awkward excuses. Well, he's just a friend. We were joking around. I didn't cheat. There's no evidence, right? But there is, I said, spreading out several pictures on the table. Images of Stephanie coming out from a nearby resort with a man, being intimate in their car, and even entering a hotel on their way back. Clear evidence of cheating. What? What's this? How did you get these? Stephanie's voice trembled. You mentioned it over the phone, didn't you? You talked about where you wanted to go on your trip and how you planned to spend the night together with him. I had someone from our company take these photos, my brother explained. How could you do such a thing during our mother's funeral? I calmly spoke. Oh, enough. What's wrong with you all? Stephanie burst out. There's no way we can stay married after this, Stephanie. We're getting a divorce, my brother declared. But I'm going to demand plenty of alimony, and you're going to have to move out of this house, Stephanie countered. Excuse me? My brother and I exchanged a glance, stunned by her audacity. I mean, when people get divorced, the wife receives alimony, right? Now, hurry up and give me my money, Stephanie demanded. Actually, that's not true. Since you cheated, you're the guilty party, and you're the one who will have to pay compensation to my brother, I intervened. What? Clearly, you're even more foolish than I thought. Pitiful, just as Lisa said. I'm going to demand alimony from you and from your lover as well, my brother added. What? And besides, it's for me to tell you to leave. Don't ever come back, Stephanie retorted, growing more agitated. No, this must be a lie. Stephanie muttered as I handed her a return suitcase and escorted her to the entrance. After closing the door, I gently patted my downcast brother's shoulder. 6 months later, my brother's divorce from Stephanie was finalized. She tried to take it to mediation, but the evidence my brother had gathered made it clear to the mediators who the guilty party was. It turned out that Stephanie had been squandering the money from their joint bank account. So my brother was able to divorce her with almost no division of assets. After that, just as he had declared, my brother claimed alimony from Stephanie and her lover. The lover, who had planned on moving in with Stephanie using the alimony from my brother, was outraged by the alimony claim and immediately broke things off with Stephanie. Having nowhere to live and being dumped by her lover, my former sister-in-law is now said to be living alone in an old apartment, working part-time. My brother went through a period of depression. He eventually sold the house, stating that he was done with marriage. Now he lives alone. Seeing my brother looking so lonely, I've been considering introducing him to a kind woman I recently met through work. She's also a divorcee, so they might be able to relate to each other easily. With those thoughts in mind, I head out and work hard again today. My mother-in-law said she wants my son to marry someone else. She thinks you're too old for him because you can't have kids, my mother-in-law said, smiling at a younger woman next to her. My husband, sitting silently beside her, didn't say anything. Feeling upset, I stormed out of the room. But soon after, I regretted it and wanted to make things right. I feel really bad about marrying into this family. My name's Olivia, and I'm 38 years old. I met my husband, Sam, who's 8 years younger, through a friend. I was unsure about dating him because of our age gap, but he insisted that age doesn't matter. I love you, Olivia, he said, and we started dating. Eventually, we got married after 6 months. When Sam introduced me to his parents, his mother didn't like me because of our age difference. When you said you were bringing a woman to consider marrying, I thought she'd be young and cute. 38 years old, Sam. I mean, no offense, but think about it again. Younger women are usually better, she told Sam right in front of me. My father-in-law intervened, saying, if Sam thinks she's good, then she's good, right? Sorry for my wife's rude comments, Olivia. Eventually, we got their approval for our marriage. My father-in-law was good at smoothing over my mother-in-law's harsh words, making it seem like he didn't want any conflict. But after we got married, he often ignored issues, which was disappointing. Sam's family was well known as landowners in our small town, and my mother-in-law loved to brag about it. Even though she wasn't technically related by blood, she married into the family, just like me. This family is very wealthy, and Sam, being the favorite, has a charming and dreamy aura. My previous partner was very careful with money, which was tough. So Sam's relaxed and generous attitude towards money is quite attractive to me. Even though my mother-in-law reluctantly accepted our marriage after my father-in-law scolded her, she doesn't seem happy about it. She keeps telling me how a good wife should act, which is frustrating. She's influential among the local women and takes pride in leading the Women's Association and being popular. She insisted I take time off during the week to meet the association members. She believes it's important to impress them. She introduced me proudly, but some of them hinted that she might not be as well liked as she thinks. Oh, and she also told me to get a medical checkup to see if I could have children. I was a bit put off that it was her, not Sam, who ordered it, but I was also curious to know if I could get pregnant, so I agreed. Gynecological exams aren't exactly a walk in the park. Despite being important for women's health, they're uncomfortable. Does anyone else find sitting in that examination chair waiting unbearable? Despite the discomfort, my bridal health check results were good. I felt relieved when the doctor said, "You're healthy." Sam seemed worried, but he looked relieved when I told him the news. I shared the results with my mother-in-law, hoping we could finally celebrate our marriage happily. But then she said, "Good, you've passed the first hurdle." The first hurdle? What did she mean by that? I thought she'd be happier. Was she secretly hoping for bad news? As I tried to figure out how to respond, my mother-in-law surprised me with a proposal. After you get married, let's build a duplex and live together. You'll split the down payment and mortgage. You work in administration, right? Your salary might not be high, but you should be able to handle it at your age. A duplex? Living together? Splitting the costs with me? I felt overwhelmed by this sudden flood of suggestions. I looked at my husband sitting beside me, hoping for some support, but he remained silent. "Could you please chime in?" I asked him. I haven't discussed anything about living together with Sam. And, well, before we talk about a duplex and living arrangements, I'd like to address the comment about my job, I said, feeling a bit hurt. You haven't discussed it. Oh, well, Sam probably thought it was understood. That's not good. We'd always planned that when Sam gets married, we'll all share a house and live together. My mother-in-law insisted. I felt a chill run down my spine. Always? Is she implying she drilled this idea into Sam's head by repeating it constantly? That's correct. That's what I had in mind. Wait, you didn't know about this? Why are you agreeing so easily? My mother-in-law questioned. I'm sorry, but I had no idea about this plan, and I can't make a decision without discussing it with Sam first. Can we please hold off on this for now? I said before leaving my in-laws' house. Later, when I talked to Sam, he admitted that after we got married, he intended to build a duplex on his parents' property and live with them. I was furious that Sam hadn't told me about his plans, but when he apologized and said he forgot, I couldn't stay mad. I thought I might not find someone as kind and handsome as Sam at my age, so I ignored the warning signs and went ahead with the marriage. Looking back, I realized I should have been more cautious. I ended up going along with my mother-in-law's wishes and helped pay for a duplex where we'd live with Sam's parents. 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. I kept it a secret from my in-laws until I was sure everything was stable. When I finally told them, they were thrilled and started discussing baby names, assuming it would be a boy, although we didn't know the gender yet. Despite feeling pressure, it's nice to see them happy. I was advised to quit my job for safety reasons, but since I help with my family's business, I have some flexibility. I decided to keep working as long as it doesn't strain me too much. My pregnancy was going smoothly, and I started feeling the baby's movements, a long-awaited joy. It's a mysterious yet happy feeling to sense a tiny life stirring inside me. I'm grateful for the joy of being a woman and experiencing this miracle. Sam, my husband, and my in-laws eagerly anticipate the baby's growth at each checkup, and I can't wait for the child's birth. I have a feeling that my relationship with my mother-in-law will improve once the baby arrives. One day, when everything seemed perfect, I noticed the baby's movements were weakening. I felt an indescribable anxiety and rushed to the hospital. The doctors gave me heartbreaking news. Something was wrong with the baby. Why? How? I was living normally. What did I do wrong? I was gripped with fear over the risks. I was hospitalized immediately, but despite the doctor's efforts, my child passed away. Just a few more months and I could have held my baby. Why did this happen so suddenly? It felt like just yesterday when the baby was moving so energetically inside me. Was it my fault? As I cried in sorrow, my husband's words pierced through my pain. How long will you cry? It's over now, isn't it? Crying won't bring the baby back. Stop crying. I was stunned. What was Sam saying? Our child had just passed away. Even though I was taken aback by this cold side of Sam I had never seen before, my shattered state of mind left me unable to speak. Then came the day I was discharged from the hospital. Sam didn't come to pick me up. I managed to force a smile and reassure the nurses who were concerned about me going home alone. When I arrived home in a taxi, Sam, my mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman greeted me. "Welcome back. It's a shame, isn't it?" said my mother-in-law with a strange smile. "Yes," I responded, taking a seat on the living room couch as suggested. The seating arrangement was strange, with my mother-in-law and the woman sitting across from me on a bench, and Sam sitting next to them, showing no effort to comfort me or make eye contact. As my mother-in-law spoke, my heart sank. "We've talked it over with Sam. Since you can't have children anymore, we don't see the point in keeping you as our daughter-in-law. We're thinking of having this other girl marry Sam instead." Hearing those words while still reeling from the shock of losing my baby, tears filled my eyes. But I refused to let myself break down. I had to stay strong, telling myself that crying would mean giving up. I kept my head down, unable to look up. Ignoring my distress, my mother-in-law continued heartlessly. "If you're willing to work and support our family instead of having children, we might consider letting you stay. What do you think? Can I count on you to take care of us if they leave me behind?" Confusion and disbelief washed over me. Without thinking, I looked at my husband for support. But when our eyes met, Sam quickly looked away. Beside him, a woman who seemed triumphant stared back at me. I remembered her as Sam's childhood friend, introduced to me at our wedding. Seeing that my husband wouldn't even meet my gaze, I realized he's not on my side. He won't help me. A chill ran down my spine, and strangely, my mind became clear. They must have discussed this during my hospitalization. They planned to replace me, the woman who can't have children, with a younger wife who can bear in hair. If I stay here, I'll only suffer. There's nothing for me here anymore. With newfound clarity, I addressed Sam. "I understand where you stand. Let's get a divorce. Please go and live happily with your new wife." Leaving the house, I returned to my family home. My parents, surprised but warmly welcoming, were already aware of my miscarriage. They were outraged by the cruelty I had faced so soon after leaving the hospital. Their warm reaction was a relief after everything, and I ended up crying a lot that day. Exhausted from tears, I fell asleep. However, the next day, my mother-in-law and husband, who had shown such cruelty in driving me out, unexpectedly showed up at my family home. At first, my mother dealt with them normally, but once she realized who they were, she refused to engage with them. Then, they started incessantly ringing the doorbell, shouting, "We've canceled the divorce. Come back now." You see, my family runs a barbecue restaurant, a well-known spot that serves a globally famous brand of beer. It's frequented by many celebrities and athletes who enjoy our delicious food. However, my husband's family comes from an old, respected background, and they looked down on our family, thinking that running a restaurant was somehow shady. They had this outdated belief that restaurant businesses were inferior, and they saw our family as less well-off. We even invited them to dine with us once before the marriage, but they declined, saying beef. We always eat at certain places. Eating meat from other restaurants gives me heartburn. Sorry. During the pre-wedding meetings, they indirectly belittled my family with remarks like, "Oh, you run a restaurant, right? That's so old-fashioned. Oh, I see, from your parents' generation. Dealing with beef, huh? Well, respectable families don't engage in such businesses." It hurt to see my parents, who had worked hard to raise me, being treated this way, but they brushed it off with a laugh, saying there are always people with narrow mindsets. On the day I left after the divorce, my husband and mother-in-law happened to see our restaurant being featured on TV. Up until then, they had shown no interest and considered my family beneath them. But they panicked when they saw the restaurant described as running its own farm that produces top-quality beef, enjoying extreme popularity with meat exported worldwide, being highly successful and lucrative. Suddenly, they tried to cozy up to me, saying, "If your family were wealthy, we wouldn't have talked about divorce. We're sorry for yesterday. We weren't thinking clearly. Please come back." After all their talk about children and heirs, was it really all about money in the end? My husband Sam and his family never asked much about my job, so I had simply told them I worked in office administration for my family's company, leading them to believe I was a low-paid and incompetent employee. Consequently, they probably assumed that asking me to pay for the house would make me give up on the marriage. In reality, I managed the meat export division of my parents' company, earning a substantial income for an office worker. Fortunately, I had saved up a good amount due to getting married later in life, allowing me to provide the money they demanded. I am also a major shareholder in the company and aspire to eventually take over my father's position to further expand the business. Despite this, they had never shown any interest or asked me about my role until it was highlighted on TV, leading to an overnight change in their treatment of me. Despite incessantly talking about wanting children, it became apparent that money was their primary concern. Their shallowness appalled me. Finally, my father, who had been silently observing the situation, lost his temper and kicked Sam and his parents out. "Thank you, Dad. You saved me," I said. My father, still seething with anger, began drinking and cursing at them. He had me explain everything from before the marriage without holding back any details, believing I couldn't handle this alone. My father promptly contacted a lawyer he knew, leading to a demand for damages since I was unjustly evicted. We also asked for reimbursement for the housing funds I had provided during our cohabitation. The claim was acknowledged, and it was decided that I would receive a refund for the expenses I covered. However, Sam alone couldn't repay the loan I had taken out, so his family home had to be sold. They had built a lavish house on rural property just for show, leaving a considerable mortgage remaining even after the sale. Moreover, the house was filled with the eccentricities of Sam's mother, making finding a buyer willing to accept it as is doubtful, suggesting that disposal could take time. Fortunately, they managed to sell some land they owned separately, allowing me to recoup my money first, which was a relief. At this point, I was grateful for marrying into a landlord's family. Sam and his parents were forced to leave their beloved two-family home and now seem to be struggling in a rented apartment, facing difficulty repaying their loan. As for the woman who was planning to marry Sam, she was only interested because she thought she'd live in a big house and that his family was wealthy. But as soon as she found out they were going to lose the house and still be in debt, she disappeared. It was probably the best decision for her because if she had married him, she might have been pressured to have a child and forced to work due to her young age. News travels fast in this rural area. Gossip spreads like wildfire, especially when it involves a well-known family like Sam's. People are buzzing with interest, commenting on how poorly they treated me and how they used to flaunt their big house, but are now in debt and living in an apartment. With both the wife and potential new wife gone, their family line might end with this generation. It's incredible how accurate the rumors are and makes you wonder who's been watching all this. The power of a rural network is quite something. Now my bossy mother-in-law, who used to act like she owned the place, sneaks around even when shopping, worried about people's stares. My parents remind me, "We warned you not to marry into a family that would insist on testing if you could get pregnant before marriage, didn't we?" And brush off the situation. They even console me in their own way, saying, "Olivia just rushed into marriage a bit. Don't worry about it. It's fine if you stay home." They try to be understanding in their own way. Despite the troubles of being kicked out and going to court, I can see they're happy to have their daughter back home. I'm grateful for their warmth. It feels like I was just dreaming or living a nightmare during my married life. But now I'm free. I may have a divorce behind me, but I'm still in my 30s. I haven't given up on marriage. Once things settle down, I plan to work hard to find a new partner. But for now, maybe I'll focus on doing good things for my parents.
You took the pain pills, right? So you shouldn't hurt anymore, right? And go ahead and vacuum. My husband looked at the pills I just swallowed. Wait a bit for them to work. I'll do the vacuuming properly, I said. He got up with a big sigh. I'm not saying I want to switch chores with him, but he could at least wait a bit, I thought, trying not to sigh. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my back, and I fell to the floor. I saw my husband rudely propping his foot on the back of the sofa. The pain was so bad I couldn't talk. Did he just kick me in the back? My husband laughed at me. I don't care if you're in pain. Just hurry up and vacuum. My name is Sally, and I'm 27 years old. I'm a regular housewife living with my husband Jacob. Our story goes back to when I joined the same company where Jacob worked. After finishing university, I got a job in sales. Jacob helped me a lot in the beginning, acting as my mentor. Jacob was handsome with short hair and customers liked him. He had a talent for persuading people and sealing deals easily. In sales, there are two types of successful people: those who know a lot about what they're selling and use that to convince customers, and those who just have a way with people and make customers want to buy from them personally. Jacob was definitely the second type. At first, I just looked up to Jacob for his success in sales, but when I struggled to close a deal and felt low, Jacob reached out to me. Over time, we grew closer, going out for meals and spending more time together. Eventually, I developed feelings for him. So when we started dating, I was incredibly happy, even crying tears of joy. And when he proposed, I was so thrilled that I couldn't stop jumping around with happiness. After we got married, we were very happy together. But there's one thing that brings me down sometimes. I've had severe menstrual cramps since I was in school. At first, I used simple painkillers from the store, but as time passed, I needed stronger ones to handle the pain. When Jacob and I were dating, he was really understanding during my periods. He would change his plans to help me, rub my back when I was hurting, and listen to me complain. I thought this care would continue after we got married, but things changed. During my period, I'd do my chores when the painkillers kicked in, take a break on the sofa for a bit, and then get back to work. But to Jacob, it seemed like I was just lying around all day. No matter how much I did around the house, he never showed any sympathy. Then we bought a new house. We used to live in an apartment, but we got a bigger place because we wanted to have kids someday. Jacob's parents like to have parties, so he decided we should host the next one at our new house. Jacob got everything organized really quickly. He told everyone the date and time of the party and gave me a list of relatives who were coming, along with their ages and what foods they didn't like. I was shocked when Jacob told me, sounding annoyed, that I needed to cater to everyone's taste for the party and that he wouldn't forgive me if I bought ready-made food. Planning the menu was tough because everyone had different dislikes, and what one person liked, another person hated. I spent several nights staying up late planning the menu. Then, just as my period, which was a bit late, started, I took a painkiller and finished cleaning the room. I decorated it with flowers, put out air fresheners, and kept going over the party plans in my head. That evening, I finished preparing the food for the party and went to bed. Jacob was laughing loudly at the TV while having his nightly drink while I was trying to finish up, dealing with my period pain. I fell asleep, remembering Jacob's laughter. On the morning of the party, I woke up before Jacob made breakfast and started cooking for the guests while tidying up. I kept checking the clock nervously as I worked. After finishing cooking, I set the dishes on the table and checked the entrance, living room, and bathroom thoroughly. The painkiller was wearing off, and the pain was getting worse. I sat down on the sofa, feeling like I couldn't bear it anymore. I wanted to lie down, but I had done my hair and makeup nicely, and I didn't know when the relatives would arrive, so I stayed seated. I looked at Jacob, who was watching TV with a drink in his hand. Even though we had to greet the guests soon, he was already drinking. I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Jacob noticed me looking at him and glared back. "What's wrong? Are you telling me not to drink so early?" Jacob asked. "No, not really." Suddenly there was a loud noise. "I get nervous too, you know. And you seem so relaxed on the sofa. I figured you were done getting ready," Jacob said, setting down his drink and walking toward me. His stare made me feel uneasy, and I had a bad feeling about it. "I'm almost done, but my period started. I took some painkillers, but they're wearing off, so I'm taking a short break. I'll be fine soon," I explained to Jacob. Hearing this, Jacob let out a heavy sigh and glared at me. "Don't act like a victim just because of a little stomachache. My mom never complained like this," Jacob snapped. Right after he said that, I felt like Jacob was walking behind me, but suddenly, I was kicked in the back and fell from the sofa to the floor. It took me a moment to realize I had been kicked. Ignoring me, Jacob sat back on the sofa and started playing a game on his phone as if nothing had happened. I didn't understand what was going on, but one thing was clear. Jacob was enjoying his game, not apologizing at all. As I tried to get up to leave, Jacob suddenly fell to the floor. I quickly looked up to see his father standing behind the sofa, looking very angry. I couldn't take my eyes off him. "What's happening?" Jacob asked, looking confused as he checked the sofa. "Dad, did you just push me?" Jacob inquired, picking up his phone from the floor. "I didn't just push you, I shoved you," my father-in-law replied. "Why? What's going on?" "Wait, are you serious? Why would you kick someone in the back? Especially Jacob, she's your wife," my father-in-law scolded him. Jacob seemed a bit surprised by my father-in-law's anger. "Well, you know, I had a few drinks and lost control," he tried to explain, but my father-in-law wasn't buying it. "Don't blame it on alcohol. No excuse for a man to hit a woman," my father-in-law said firmly. "What do you mean?" "It's just a way to discipline," Jacob argued back. "Discipline?" She was taking a break on the sofa because she was in pain. I was teaching her that she doesn't work, she doesn't rest. "Isn't that right, Sally?" Jacob asked, turning to me for support. I didn't know how to answer Jacob's sudden question. I had finished preparing and was just trying to rest on the sofa. Maybe I should just tell the truth. Seeing my dilemma, my father-in-law looked at me. "Sally, is what Jacob said true?" he asked. I couldn't bring myself to answer. If I told the truth now, Jacob might get upset, and that wouldn't be fair to the relatives who were coming over to see our new home. I was trying to figure out what to say when my father-in-law spoke again. "Sally, your silence says a lot, doesn't it?" he remarked. "Sorry," I managed to mumble, feeling confused by his words. "If Jacob was telling the truth, you would have confirmed it right away, but you stayed silent. Does that mean there's something, or everything, wrong with his story?" My father-in-law's words struck me hard. I wanted to tell the truth. "Everything's ready, we just need to welcome the guests." "I'm just not feeling well today," I said, trying to be diplomatic. "Ah, you're just on your period?" Jacob interjected abruptly. I felt like crying at his lack of sensitivity. I had carefully chosen my words to avoid such a direct topic in front of my father-in-law, and yet, stop saying my period is just an excuse for feeling unwell. If you're done with your tasks, just say so. It seems like you think I'm sitting around doing nothing because I haven't finished. Jacob kept talking, not noticing how hard I'd been working. That's how Jacob saw things. He didn't remember me telling him earlier that I was almost done with the preparations. He didn't see all the work I've been doing since early morning, even since yesterday, getting everything ready and cooking. He didn't see me taking pills to cope with the pain and keep going. He decided we have the gathering here but didn't lift a finger to help with the preparations or cooking. I did it all by myself. I started to get really angry. "Listen to me," I began, but Jacob cut me off. "She's always complaining about how bad her menstrual cramps are, but she never gets used to them. Every month when she gets her period, this is what happens," Jacob said, turning to his father. "Dad, Mom wasn't like this, right?" Jacob sought validation. "But it seems I made the right choice to come over early and help Sally since you, Jacob, decided to host this gathering without considering her." "What? Inconsiderate? Me? No, Jacob, that's you. If you had worked with Sally, you would have seen how hard she worked on the preparations despite her pain. Instead, what did you do? Did you start drinking before everyone arrived? You were the one slacking off, Jacob." My father-in-law's outburst shocked everyone there. Jacob seemed to shrink back at his father's words. I didn't want Jacob to regret this like I do. "I've tried to educate you about this, but..." My father-in-law sat down heavily, sighing deeply. "Your mother also suffered from severe menstrual cramps like Sally. As a man with no knowledge about menstruation, back when information wasn't as easily available as it is now, I used to think your mother, who couldn't handle her own body, was just being spoiled. I thought only people who couldn't manage themselves suffered from menstruation." My father-in-law spoke slowly, as if remembering the past, his gaze distant. "Back then, painkillers were just for peace of mind. Your mother, being a full-time housewife, was told by my mother to do all the household chores. No matter how much menstrual pain she was in, I didn't let her rest. Then, one day, your mother fainted. I rushed her to the hospital, and the doctor told us she had endometriosis. Because of that, her dream of giving you siblings became impossible." My father-in-law continued. Jacob listened intently, staring at my father-in-law's face. Every person's body is different, and not everyone will have the same experiences. But if you ignore severe menstrual pain, it can lead to illness. Your mother did get sick. She was dealing with household chores, raising children, caring for her in-laws, and living with an inconsiderate husband. She had many sources of stress. She ended up infertile and couldn't get pregnant as she had hoped. I blamed it on the times and blamed my mother, but I was wrong. It was my responsibility to understand. It's a pain that we men can't experience, so I should have properly listened to your mother and accepted her as she was. I failed to do that. It was my fault. I regret not challenging my mother's views and remaining ignorant, even now." My father-in-law spoke in a somber tone, gently supported by my mother-in-law. I could only nod to my mother-in-law, who had just arrived, with a sad smile on her face. "You did your best to understand me, didn't you? Despite your demanding job, you even helped out with household chores. And to think that you cut ties with your own parents for me." My mother-in-law looked at my father-in-law with kind eyes. "Of course I did. I didn't want to burden you any more than I already had. I wanted the three of us to live happily, so that's why I did what I did. But cutting ties with my parents was a big decision. I wanted to avoid having to make such big decisions. That's why I've always tried to teach you, Jacob, hoping that you wouldn't make the same mistakes as I did. But it seems that I wasn't able to convey that to you at all," my father-in-law explained. Feeling the weight of the conversation, Jacob tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, don't you think you're being a bit too dramatic, Dad? In my memory, sure, there were times when Mom was really unwell and had to lie down. But I don't remember her ever having to lay down because of something as minor as her period. Is this some kind of nostalgia bias? Are you maybe just assuming it was harder than it really was?" Jacob's words hit a nerve. My mother-in-law's hand, resting on my father-in-law's shoulder, trembled slightly. He gently patted her hand and gave Jacob a stern look. "You just forgot." Of course, as a mother, she'd want to shield her child from worry. She tried her best not to let you see. But if it were just a matter of gritting your teeth and bearing it, it wouldn't be a disease. Your mother did have to lie down because she was suffering from period pain. I remember you coming home from school and saying that she was asleep again. I remember having an honest discussion with you about it. She wasn't just shirking responsibilities. She had no choice but to lie down because she was unwell. It seems you didn't even notice that. You weren't looking at Sally, and you weren't looking at your mother either. My father-in-law expressed his disappointment. Upon hearing Jacob's words, my father-in-law looked visibly disheartened. I didn't know what to say or if I should even try to ease the tension. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Glancing at the clock, it was 5 minutes before our agreed gathering time. Despite my aching stomach, I hurriedly answered the door. As expected, it was one of our relatives. I quickly greeted them and rushed back to the front door. Upon opening it, all of our relatives stood there, holding a beautifully arranged bouquet of flowers as a housewarming gift. I thanked them warmly, provided guest slippers, and courteously ushered them into the living room. When all the relatives entered the living room, the tension between Jacob and my in-laws was palpable. The relatives exchanged uneasy glances with each other. "What's happening?" one of the relatives asked my father-in-law. "Thanks for coming to Jacob's housewarming party. We were just in the middle of a disagreement, so I apologize for the tense atmosphere," my father-in-law explained. Jacob here thought Sally was just being lazy when she was actually resting on the sofa because she wasn't feeling well. He pushed her off the sofa. So I was reprimanding him. At my father-in-law's words, all the relatives looked shocked, and a younger woman among them approached me with concern. "Are you okay?" "You must be exhausted from all the preparations," she said sympathetically. I shook my head in response. "No, it's just... I'm dealing with really painful menstrual cramps." "What are you saying?" "Even workplaces offer menstrual leave, you know. I've used it myself." The woman remarked in disbelief. "The severity varies, but if it's really bad, you can take time off work. Why can't you rest at home?" With determination, she turned her gaze towards Jacob, who seemed intimidated by the disapproving looks from his parents and all the relatives. Unable to withstand their stares, Jacob hurriedly left the room and retreated to his own. Despite his departure, neither his parents nor any of the relatives followed him. It appeared that the relatives understood my mother-in-law's condition, and even the men showed empathy, which was a relief. Immediately, my father-in-law and mother-in-law approached me, apologizing profusely for their son's behavior, while the relatives admired the newly constructed house and praised the delicious home-cooked meal I had prepared. Not a single person blamed me. Everyone was impressed by the meal I had served, and I received plenty of compliments. Feeling somewhat uplifted, the painkillers began to take effect, and I found myself enjoying the gathering. After some time, I received an email from Jacob. In his message, he expressed frustration that he couldn't enjoy the event because of me and lamented how unfair it was that he was being isolated from the family, with no one taking his side. His choice to communicate via email rather than face-to-face conversation left me feeling upset. As I was contemplating how to respond, my mother-in-law glanced at my smartphone. Upon seeing the message, she immediately rose from her seat. My father-in-law, noticing her reaction, inquired, "What's happening?" My mother-in-law swiftly took the smartphone from me and handed it to him. As my father-in-law read the message, he too stood up abruptly. "He still doesn't get it. We need to take him back and start over with his education," he declared. It was an unexpected development, but my in-laws appeared resolute. Soon, the relatives also voiced agreement, suggesting that Jacob needed to be re-educated, and it seemed they were fully supportive of the idea. After some time, as the relatives gradually departed, my mother-in-law made her way to Jacob's room and pulled him out. With both his parents gripping his arms, they whisked him away before he could protest. About a week after Jacob returned to his parents' home, I received an email from him. He shared how my mother-in-law had been tirelessly educating him about women's bodies, the challenges of menstrual pain, and even had him do household chores while pretending to experience menstrual discomfort. He complained about the difficulty of balancing work and chores. I couldn't help but chuckle as I read his complaints. It seemed like they were indeed starting his education from scratch, just as they had promised. Perhaps now he was beginning to grasp a bit of what I had been going through, and it brought a smile to my face. During Jacob's absence, I decided to address my menstrual pain head-on. Encouraged by my female relatives who suggested seeing a gynecologist for my severe discomfort, I visited a clinic. The doctor provided helpful advice on medications and lifestyle changes. Living without Jacob's interference turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. I could go about my day at my own pace and rest on the sofa whenever I needed. It was a life where I could prioritize taking care of my body. I found myself wanting to prolong this peaceful period. Part of it was due to my mother-in-law's guidance, but mostly I simply enjoyed the relaxed lifestyle. I chose not to respond to any of Jacob's emails. A few weeks later, Jacob returned home with my in-laws. They sat him down at the dining table and handed him a business card. It turned out to be a lawyer's contact information, and I was shocked, fearing that we were about to initiate divorce proceedings right then and there. Feeling slightly overwhelmed, I listened as my father-in-law spoke quietly. "Sally, if he ever mistreats you again, don't hesitate to contact this person for a divorce," he said, his gaze serious. During the time Jacob was away, it seems he had a serious conversation with my in-laws and promised to change his ways. Since then, Jacob has kept his word, no longer acting arrogantly and willingly helping with household chores, especially when I'm struggling with my period. His dismissive comments about my period and its pain had also gradually faded away. Finally, I found myself settling into a peaceful life with Jacob, which was a huge relief. Going forward, I intend to prioritize my health and well-being, living sensibly and taking good